You sent the message. You read it back, decided it was fine, and pressed send. Now you are waiting. The phone sits face down on the table, and some part of you, some very old part, is scanning the room without moving your eyes. That feeling has a name in neuroscience. It is called hypervigilant social monitoring, and it did not begin with smartphones. It began roughly 300,000 years ago, in a world where a broken trust between two people inside a band of 30 did not feel like emotional pain. It felt like death. But the story is not what you think it is. In 2006, evolutionary anthropologist Robin Dunbar at the University of Oxford published a study analyzing the neocortex ratios of over 40 primate species. His conclusion was precise. The human brain evolved to manage relationships with roughly 150 people. No more, no fewer. That number recurred across military units, hunting bands, Neolithic villages, and modern company departments. It was not a cultural choice, it was a biological ceiling. Inside that ceiling, every relationship counted. Every alliance had weight. And betrayal, a broken alliance inside a group of 150, was not an emotional wound. It was a structural collapse. If someone in your band stopped sharing meat, stopped warning you about predators, stopped covering your back during conflict, you did not lose a friend. You lost a percentage of your survival infrastructure. Every betrayal was a resource problem. In 1999, biological anthropologist Jane Lancaster at the University of New Mexico published research on reciprocal altruism in small-scale human societies across 12 archaeological sites dating back 70,000 years. What she found in the behavioral residue, in burial patterns, in food-sharing evidence, embedded in the fossil record, in the spatial distribution of sleeping sites, was a consistent system. Ancient humans tracked debts. They tracked who had given, who had taken, and who had taken without returning. Not abstractly, not symbolically. The tracking was physical. It lived in memory, in reputation, in the stories told around fires. In 2011, developmental psychologist Felix Warneken at Harvard University demonstrated that children as young as 14 months old spontaneously punish perceived unfairness in others before they have language, before they have been taught the concept of fairness. The monitoring system is pre-linguistic. It is structural. It arrived before culture could have shaped it. What no one expected was what happened after the betrayal. The assumption, the one built quietly into everything we believe about ancient human behavior, is that early humans responded to betrayal the way modern culture suggests they should have, with confrontation, with expulsion, with violence, with some form of justice that restored the balance. The archaeological record says something different. In 2016, paleoanthropologist Erik Trinkaus at Washington University in St. Louis published an extensive analysis of skeletal remains from burial sites spanning 40,000 to 100,000 years ago. Across 66 burial sites in Africa, Europe, and Western Asia, he identified a pattern that had no evolutionary explanation if survival was the only priority. Deliberate care of the injured, healed fractures, regrown bone around wounds that should have been fatal. Individuals who had been completely dependent on others for months before they died. These were not the strongest members of the group. These were people who at some point could give nothing back, and the group had carried them anyway. Ancient humans did not always expel what failed them. In 2014, anthropologist Christopher Boehm at the University of Southern California, in his research on what he termed reverse dominance hierarchies, documented a behavior pattern found consistently across 339 hunter-gatherer societies, studied over a 40-year period. When a member of the group became too powerful, when they took too much, shared too little, placed their own interest above the band, the group responded not with direct confrontation, but with coordinated social withdrawal. They stopped including that person. They stopped sharing information. They became quiet around them. The offender was not attacked. They were socially erased. The pain of social exclusion activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. In 2003, neurologist Naomi Eisenberger at UCLA published a study in Science demonstrating that the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, the same region that processes the pain of a broken bone, lights up identically when a person experiences social rejection. The brain does not distinguish between the two. It never did, because for 300,000 years, there was no reason to. Being excluded from the group and being injured in the wild produced the same outcome. And this is where the assumption collapses entirely. We have always believed that the ancient human response to betrayal was about punishment, that justice is old, that the instinct to retaliate, to correct, to make someone pay, this is what our ancestors built into us. It is the story we tell in our legal systems, our religions, our conflict resolution frameworks. Wrong was done. Wrong must be answered. This is the deep grammar of human civilization. But the evidence suggests something quieter and more devastating. Ancient humans did not primarily punish betrayal. They primarily survived it. The response was not revenge, it was recalibration. They adjusted who was inside their trust network. They redistributed their social investment. They tightened the inner circle. They continued. The goal was never justice. The goal was always continuity. Justice is a recent invention. Survival is not. In 2018, psychologist Kristen Brethel-Howitz at the National Institutes of Health published research comparing the brain structures of highly altruistic individuals, people who had donated kidneys to strangers, with a control group. The altruistic individuals had measurably larger right amygdalae and showed heightened neural sensitivity to the suffering of others. The capacity for radical trust, for choosing to extend care even after it has been violated, had to have a biological substrate. It was selected for. It survived. Something in the ancient human brain decided, over hundreds of thousands of years and millions of individual decisions, that the ability to trust again was worth keeping, even after betrayal. Even after the evidence was against it. Because a band that could repair its internal damage was stronger than a band that could only punish it. The capacity to reintegrate, to renegotiate trust, to absorb a loss and continue, this was the survival advantage. Not forgiveness as a moral achievement. Forgiveness as a biological strategy. You already know this, not intellectually, in your body. You have been betrayed and you have stayed. You have been betrayed and you have left. But you left slowly, over months, and something in you tracked every small signal for longer than made sense. You have trusted someone again after you promised yourself you wouldn't. Not because you forgot, because some system inside you, older than language, older than civilization, ran a calculation you were not consulted about and decided the alliance was worth the risk. That system is 300,000 years old. It has been running longer than your name for it. It was built not for relationships but for survival inside small groups where the alternative to trust was isolation, and isolation was death. You were never just deciding whether to trust someone. You were running ancient survival software on a modern problem. The phone on your table, face down, waiting to be checked, exists because human beings needed to stay connected across distances that a band of 150 never had to cross. It solved a problem that the ancient architecture was not designed for. It gave us reach without presence, contact without cost, the appearance of alliance without the biological stakes that made alliance meaningful. Something was lost when that happened. Something that had no name because it never needed one. The weight of knowing that the people you trusted had no other choice but to be there. That the group was small enough that leaving meant dying. That your betrayal of someone and their betrayal of you both had consequences that neither of you could escape. That weight is gone now. And without it, something the ancient system built to survive is running on empty, scanning the room, monitoring the silence, waiting for a reply that costs nothing to send and nothing to withhold.